know his work?
Yes.
So Jerzy Grotowski, for those of you who don't know who he was, are probably not going to know what I'm about to say either. There's a movie called My Dinner with Andre, which is very sort of was famous in the culture at a certain moment about this theater director, Andre Gregory, who sort of goes crazy and feels like he doesn't know what the meaning of life is, and then goes and works with this madman director, Polish director in a Polish forest and finds the meaning of life, right? And so this was a very seminal moment for lots of Americans, and it was 82 the film came out. At that point, Jerzy Grotowski, who is the guy in the movie that Andre goes to be with in the Polish forest, was a world-famous theater director who had become, what's that? The Poor Theater, who had become famous for working with actors in such a profound way that people would have religious experiences, audiences would have religious experience in just watching the work that these actors were doing. So I worked with Jerzy Grotowski for about a year and a half in my very early 20s. And it remains to this day a very central, informative experience. And what was central and informative about it for me was, to this day, I've perhaps met only one other person who had so singularly and completely bended the shape of his life and the circumstances of everything around him to the fulfillment of his mission. There was an uncompromising quality I have never been around, again, maybe only one other person, that was matched with an absolutely peerless intellect. So there's a combination of pellucid intelligence, absolute will, profound wisdom, and total commitment. And seeing that as in my early 20s was understanding what was possible. Seeing an image of how far you really could go.
What made you leave acting?
I think in large part, well, two things. I don't like anybody telling me what I can do with my life. So if you're going to be an actor, that's the challenge. Because you depend on other people to give you jobs and that you're right for a role or whatever, and that's just not my style. I can't live in that sort of dependent relationship to reality. That's one thing. The other thing is probably has a lot to do with the politics of the business. That a young man of some creative capacities wishing to become an actor as a South Asian American was not going to be the lead on The Wire, at least not in my generation. So it just seemed like, you know what, I got other fish to fry. That's fine. Let me go fry those fish.
Please.
These are sensitive times we live in. Do you ever worry about your personal safety?
Yeah, some people do. Some people close to me do. You know, I think at the end of the day, if I'm really honest with you about that, there are things that are more important than life. And I know that because those are the folks that have inspired me in my life. And I actually don't think that I'm in danger because I feel that the work that I'm doing brings a kind of respect, oddly enough, for the tradition with it. That there's no real way to walk away from American Dervish, even though at the climactic moment the Quran is burned. Right? And the book came out when Pastor Terry Jones was burning Qurans across, condemning the Quran and burning it. The Quran is burned in the book, but there's such a deep love for Islam in the book as well that I think it's difficult I don't get those violent sort of nobody writes me with that. I think people do write me and say, very talented writer, why are you not using your gifts to bring people to Allah? Why? Next time, will you please write a book that makes people want to become Muslim?
Instead of running away.
I don't know, please. That's not my job.
Yeah, I was wondering, it was like you just struck when you were reading American Dervish how dramatic it was and sort of alive as a drama it was.
Yeah.
And then to hear you describe yourself as a dramatic narrative artist, thought about, I guess, other works of literature that maybe don't move narratively, or are kind of powered sort of more linguistic. I was thinking the whole time actually you were doing that about Nabokov, who said that he could determine whether a novel was good or not just by how much dialogue was in it. And if there was a lot of dialogue, he knew it was bad.
Right.
Or this, when you were saying that I just let, my characters, I explore their truth. And Nabokov used to say, like, that is just total nonsense. I work my characters like galley slaves, as I think as he used to sort of talk about it. And I guess...
I mean, Nabokov did not appreciate Dostoevsky.
Right,
So
exactly.
So we know what we feel about Nabokov.
Right, but I think, on some level, though, Dostoevsky's also a kind of interesting person, right? In the sense that he's not... Like, that was very much a sort of... He was, on some level, doing a kind of artistic project that's even different from the one of... If you think about, like, the brothers Karamazov, I mean, that's a project that grew out of... He was set out to prove X. He thinks actually, sort of unfortunately, he didn't quite do it, and that sort of Yvonne basically capsizes the whole book.
Right.
Maybe he's right about that, maybe he's not. But on some level, right, he's not actually sort of seeking to sort of just tell us, spin a yarn and sort of explore his character's inner truths either. I mean, I think he seemed to, at least in his letters, view that as a novel of ideas.
Very prescriptive.
So, like, what would you, I guess, how do you find yourself thinking that what you're doing is maybe better able to do certain kinds of things than, say, books like that? And, like, what kinds
Books
of
like
The Brothers Karamazov,
No,
or
I think I see
Lolita,
I
or
think
you
I
see what I
see,
mean?
well,
Like,
Pulitzer Karamazov and Lolita are completely different.
Right, that's what I mean, yeah, right.
So I find myself, the reason I brought up Dostoevsky is because I find myself I feel much closer to Dostoevsky than I do to Nabokov. Nabokov is great. I don't spend any time reading it because I don't personally find it as meaningful for me. I think the language is lovely, but you know what I mean? That's lovely language. So, but that's my sense, and I find Nabokov's characters to be flat, to use the Forrestian term. You know what I mean? Sometimes his voice is around, like Humbert, or Charles Kimbo. There's a roundness to the voice, but I find the actual actions of the character to be flat. That's my feeling about it. So I would have my critique of Nabokov as he would have very, very decisively of my work. I feel like, look, I mean, at the end of the day, you just do what comes easily or best or, easiest to you in order to accomplish the goal you want to accomplish. I don't see myself exploring the inner truths of my characters, which is a formulation that you use. I find myself exploring the behavioral truths of my characters. That's what as a dramatic storyteller, that's what I'm interested in. A character, I know who a character is when they do something that surprises me. Aristotle defines character as the doing of the character, which is, I think, in stark contradiction to how many writers and MFA programs often teach writing, in which characters are conceived as a list of whats. He likes the 76ers. He uses Aquafresh toothpaste. He strolls online. We're often taught in MFA programs that we should compile very long lists, biographical data and details that will comprise the surface and the depth of who the character is. To me, I don't know who a character is until they do something that surprises me. That again goes back to the Kierkegaardian idea of the tightening of the screws and the releasing of what's inside. So that's what I'm interested in, because I'm interested in human experience. And yeah, I don't know if that's even a coherent answer.
Do you find that to be
Okay.
but do you find that to be a sort of fundamentally dramatic insight? Like, that's the kind of,
so.
you mean like you're sort of reading Nabokov as a dramatist and thus sort of finding in him something that is fundamentally non-dramatic in that kind of sense? Do you think that basically you're always at heart a dramatist?
We could talk about Nabokov, or we could talk about Henry James, who I think is better than Nabokov. We could talk about, there's all these gradations of the aesthete, right? The aesthete who, in literary practice and theme and form, harkens back to the aristocrat and the dispensation of free time and the refinements of the self, right? This is a very long tradition. I'm a preacher. I'm not interested in that stuff. It's a completely different approach. Now, does that mean that the work is any less powerful? I don't know that Melville I don't think that Lolita holds a twig to Moby Dick. I think Lolita's great, but I don't think it holds a twig.
Monica should
I
have
feel
been
like
here.
those are fighting.
They probably
I would actually
The dramatic intensity
Yeah,
is.
that's-
I'm getting.
So one last question from, or, go ahead, you can,
My name is Shafika. I was gonna ask, so you mentioned several times about, not really taking into consideration the, interpretations of the reader or the opinion of the reader,
Right.
while composing these works. So
Yeah.
if you are basically not paying attention towards what the reader is taking into account, what is the purpose of publicizing these books? What is the purpose of putting these books out there for readers to, read or viewers to watch,
Right.
and then not take into consideration the way they would perceive it?
It's a beautiful question. Thank you for that question. There are two modalities of what a reader thinks. We could say what a reader thinks and what a reader feels. Right? I am interested in what a reader feels.
So is it kind of like appealing to the heart, but then neglecting what the brain or the mouth has to say?
It's not about neglecting
interpretations of it?
It's not about neglecting it. It's about understanding that what I'm interested in is the experience of the heart. And that at the end of the day, I can do my best to order a world that is going to perhaps shut off certain interpretations. But you know what? Those folks who want to interpret it, they're going to do it anyway. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create the illusion of life. Because when it appears that something real is happening here or on the screen or here, the reader wakes up in a completely different way. That's what I'm interested in, because I know that's the experience that is going to mark some readers in a much deeper way than the sentences that they take away, which they can share with others or forget, or just get new sentences from the Twitter. It's a different kind of engagement that I yearn for.
Did you always, Janet, maybe we can get your question.
I have an unbeautiful question to ask. I was wondering, why film? I mean, from everything you've said about the kind of control that you want to have over this, authentic experience, why on earth would you subject yourself or your screenplays to the work of people in the cinema? By the way, I'm a film teacher. That's what I'm asking.
Because I see film as the dominant storytelling mode of our time.
But that shows an interest then in hitting a wide audience, right?
Oh, I just call myself an entertainer.
Oh, yeah.
I'm interested in a very wide audience. I'm just not interested in telling that audience what to think.
No, I understand.
Right.
I'm just wondering why you would even.
Because I see movies as the central storytelling mode of our time. As an artist, as a young man of great ambition, I could not conceive of myself as being a dominant central voice without having some profound understanding of film language and film structure.